Reporter Laura Otieno is standing by. She joins us on phone. Good morning, Laura. Yesterday's announcement by the NASA leader Raila Odinga was much anticipated, particularly in areas that are considered to be his strongholds. What was the reception of area residents to the formation of a People's Assembly?
Well, a very good morning to you and at the Communications Center. And here in Kisumu town, the mood is rather somber. The residents have not quite received that information very well. They were expecting, the few were speaking to say that they were expecting something more action, or rather something a very strong stance from Raila Odinga. But generally, right now here in town, they're a little hostile to the media, not entirely, but they're still not gotten their heads around what Raila had said. So they're saying that right now they still are a little unwelcome to media presence, but of course we will be following up to see how they'll be reacting to the media and stuff like that. But they have already opened the road. It's business as usual here in Kisumu. People are just sort of going back to their businesses, saying that the formation of People's Assembly is a step that they'll be taking one day at a time. Generally, after now, they go back to their businesses, look for methods of fending for themselves, and then the rest they say is one day at a time. So there's some sort of divided opinion. Some are saying that what Odinga said was right. Others feel like he should have come out with a stronger stance the way he came after the August 8th forced the decision to go to the court. So it's still some sort of a divided opinion here in Kisumu. Some feeling, but most of the people have gone back to their businesses right now. The CBD is pretty open. Other areas in Kondele, there is some calm. People going about their businesses. So that is what is going down here in Kisumu town. There is hostility towards the media, but of course we're hoping that they'll be warming up with time.
All right, thanks, Laura, for that report. And Samson, as you've heard, a bit of an anticlimax, residents expecting something more action-oriented. Be that as it may, I want to return to the constitution of, I beg your pardon, to the issue of whether this is NASA's options extra-constitutionally, and why that, and is that a complete abandonment of this current constitution, to the extent that, yes, there are other avenues to seek redress if they feel their legally appointed representatives aren't doing their work. Is this People's Assembly going to usurp power from the county assembly, from the National Assembly, and what do you think the impact of that would be?
Thank you very much. I think this is an indictment to my colleagues that they have been boycotting Senate and a National Assembly. Until now, the people want to take over. So the issue is we have been having a very serious, some of these conversations. And I remember I was sharing with my brother here, there was some, for example, there were amendments he wanted to propose at Senate. But when it reached time it was in the order paper, and it reached time to raise some of those issues, which as Jubilee we were ready to listen to, he decided to take off. And I think if the people from their region want to take over and maybe be part of some of these issues they ventilate at the People's Assembly, it means this is an indictment to their elected representatives that they are not performing their work. They have decided to boycott and go to Bunge la Mwananchi. And I think the best option is some of these, because they have raised, and I have heard my friends say, some of these issues they have raised, that most of the leaders that were elected allegedly were computer generated. So if NASA are standing on high moral ground, why don't they resign? Like, I would see if Senator Mutula would want to resign, because they are blaming now the IBC that most of these leaders were computer generated. Why don't they resign from this position so that they can go ahead and go now to Bunge la Mwananchi or People Assemblies? Because when you talk about people, if they are ventilating on the issue, what is the model? What is how will they ensure some of those issues, some of those key issues they are raising, which outside I would just call it maybe a storytelling session? How will they bring that some of those issues are brought until they are implemented? And therefore, these are some of the, and we thought this constitution, as it provided for, when it creates the elected representatives, it is because we have a platform in the National Assembly, county assemblies, and even the Senate, where some of these issues and concerns can be raised. It can be legally, have the legal basis. It can be implemented by the executive. And therefore, if you resort now to the people who have given you the mandate again to exercise, it means it's an indictment that the boycott of the senators and members of parliament of the NASA-related coalition has taken toll on the people who elected them, and they think now let us take charge because Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. is no longer performing his duty, and they have decided that let us boycott. And maybe the only time, by the way, they show up is when they're having their meals in the mess at the parliament buildings, and it is very unfortunate that they only show up at that time, maybe to key in, to ensure they don't get by the sittings, they are not gotten by the speaker so that they can be recalled or removed from the Senate of the National Assembly. And I think this is the conversations that we need to have. This thing called People's Assembly, they don't have any moral background, they don't have any legal basis, they don't have any political direction. And I think I want to agree with what Oliver said. This is an exit strategy of Raila Odinga. And by the way, Raila Odinga is a very smart politician. He is reinventing himself for 2022.
Let me tell you about this, talking about extra constitutional or not. Article 1, sub-article 2 says the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their elected representative. We have chosen to exercise it directly. Let's go back to his statement about computer-generated legislators. He was saying that if we think the legislators are computer-generated, people like Mutula Kilonzo Jr. should resign. Jubilee decided to form a tag team with IEBC to generate just their people to create enough majority in each of the two assemblies, Senate and the National Assembly. They did not generate the other people who are elected for NASA. That you need to know. But I also must tell you, the assemblies in Kenya today as constituted cannot work for the people of Kenya. When you hear the president himself say that they have majority, they can even change the constitution, you know very well that whatever he suggests, whatever bill he originates from his executive, will always pass through the assemblies as they are today. If this bill does not go according to the will of the people, who is going to talk for them when NASA is a minority in this assembly? The only way the world can hear and know that there was an alternative to what Jubilee is propagating in the two assemblies is by having the People's Assembly, who will also give a verdict on the same issue. You know, when there are two things to compare is when you will know that actually Jubilee is wrong. But you see, they are so bitter that NASA's members are boycotting these two assemblies because victory is not sweet when there is no opponent. They would like to go there and beat them in that assembly with their numbers and enjoy that victory. This is the same thing that has happened to Uhuru Kenyatta now. In fact, he ended up now competing with the voter turnout because victory was not going to be sweet without a proper opponent. Just be in the assembly, and I know sooner or later the Jubilee former URP and TNA wings will start fighting as long as NASA keeps off those debates.
But let me ask you this, Odoyo, yes. Because, and again, we started from the premise of if it's moral, if it is legitimate, which is legitimate, which isn't, etc. And because of that, because there is a very strong kind of moral basis on which NASA claims to be, you know, making its moves, wouldn't then the highest form of the solidarity to your position then be, if you believe that Parliament is not working in its entirety, don't just resign from it. If it no longer represents the interests of the people, shouldn't, isn't it now, in fact, the right time for NASA legislators across the board to withdraw themselves from an institution that they have castigated so severely to the extent of forming a parallel organ? Is that not then fidelity to your position? And
what would they achieve by resigning? They would achieve nothing. In fact, if they don't resign, they can still go to that parliament and get the privileges there. This is Kenya. Everybody wants his bread on the table. What do you mean?
So you agree that it is
so, and in any case, we have hundreds of cases in court. Maybe we will just get our majority back. The majority that was taken from us using the computers. We may get it back, and then we sit back in parliament and pass laws that serve people of Kenya, not one that serve Jubilee and their leaders who are planning for 2022.
Oliver, what do you think? Are they speaking from both sides of their mouth, or is it actual strategy? They could get their positions back. How many court cases are out there? Well, I don't have
349, I think.
Oh, come now.
And I think first
349, but of course that includes even the senators and governors.
Okay, possibly.
And I think first and foremost, we must desist from pontificating amorphous positions, which are neither here nor there. The Constitution is clear, and even where Odoyo is reading about the people exercising direct sovereignty. I think Article 37 is such, whereby people exercise direct authority, their sovereignty directly by picketing, by doing all manner of things directly without invoking or without using the elected leaders. Therefore, I think to come and say that we can have a people's assembly, it is just an oxymoron, to be very honest. And two, look at it this way economically. How will a person in Turkana get his way into this people's assembly in Nairobi? How will a person in Suba get his way into the people's assembly? How will a person in Namanga be represented in the people's assembly? Two, how do we know that these are not selfish? It's going to end up being a Nairobi club? Yes, it is a Nairobi. And how do we know that these are not selfish interests whereby NASA people or the NRM, that the militia group of it, is not planning to use it to export violence to other regions? Look at it this way. They are saying that they will go up to the ward level. My danger and my fear, the danger and my fear is this. We might end up having violence exported to each and every part of this country because they know in itself the violence cannot be. I think now we are trying to pontificate a militia in the name of an assembly. And we have known the people in this country who have the monopoly of violence are NASA. Wherever
why would you conclude, and why would you use a term as strong as militia to a meeting of people to ventilate their issues? What does that have to do with
wherever they have met, there have always been violence. Yesterday, one of your colleagues was roughed up, and it was a good meeting. We could see the tables were arranged, everything was in order. But their actions resemble that of a militia. They are organized in how they look like, but their actions speak louder than how they look. The other position,
1 minute to respond to that militia.
Let me finish. The other thing is, when we talk of this People's Assembly, and we have asked here, and even the senator is saying it will be amorphous. One, there is the part of the political goodwill. Who will choose these people to attend the People's Assembly? They must have a mandate from the people. The people must donate. We formed a state for us to have order. That is the premise on which we have the social contract, is because of order. We cannot allow a section of the population to take us back to the where life was short, brutal, and nasty. We cannot allow that. I think.
But you know, this is whether you like it or not, this is going to be a very serious catch-22 situation for Jubilee, to the extent that in such a tense or uncertain, perhaps is a better word, in such an uncertain environment, can you afford to not allow people to ventilate?
I think let us not confuse two positions. Ventilating is allowed. After, in any democracy, the elections are vicious, and after the elections, people must ventilate. We must allow the healing process, and I think we are in the healing process where people come up with all manner of things. In 2013, when Jubilee bet NASA, they came up with Okoa Kenya. The constitution is this, the constitution is that. But I think we are in the process. Healing and ventilating is their right, but for them to come and form amorphous and other things extra constitutionally is not the position. We must not allow ourselves to work towards where we have a constitution without constitution.
But extra constitutional does not necessarily equal illegal, and I think we need to think about that. Mutula, I mean, I know we've really dwelt on this subject, but I want to wind it up on the point of has Jubilee in a way brought this on itself? And the reason why I am asking it that way is because I remember just about perhaps 3 or so weeks ago, or a little longer, maybe 4 weeks ago, when the crisis really came to a hilt, if you like. I was hosting the National Assembly leader with John Buddy, who was at that point the minority leader in the National Assembly, and we were talking about what is the role of Parliament in getting us out of the crisis at that point, pre this repeat election. And it was the position of the majority leader then that it is okay for the majority to speak in the same voice with the executive. After all, they're born of one and the same thing. They espouse the same ideals, and they are there to push forth the agenda that the executive campaigned on. The debate is as it is. Is it your position that the legislature has become an extension of the executive, and should it not be in a situation where it is the majority? I mean, which other position do you expect them to be putting forward?
Yes, and before I answer the question, allow me to respond to my colleague and said two things. One, that it's against our standing orders for him to besmirch the character of another senator, particularly the ones who are not here and cannot defend themselves. If they choose to go to parliament and have a meal, so be it. Number two, on the question of amendments, I thought that it would be because the amendments were so badly drafted. The election amendment laws were so badly drafted that I thought that to help these guys to think, I would propose some amendments. And you know what they did? They actually took on board portions of my amendment and recreated another bill. Another bill,
and
which they
good or bad?
No. It's a good thing because I helped them think. But in the end, my withdrawal was legitimate because we went into the election without the president assenting to the law. Okay. Coming back to what you are saying, Jubilee has created this, and we call it in some very term called oligarchy.
Okay.
Where you,
for the benefit of my audience, not me.
For you. For you, yeah, for your benefit first.
Google search here shows
a few people who isolate themselves and create these privileges amongst themselves. The idea that, and I had the president, and let me say, I say this very honestly, where the president says, we can pass law without NASA. We can control parliament without NASA brigade. It's an oligarchy where you create a system run by a few. Is parliament independent? Parliament is like an appendage of the executive. When they need to do anything, they are summoned to State House. They are not offered water or tea. They are given what is called, I read the Riot Act. They hold troop there at high speed. Without even the courtesy of tea. To pass whatever they have been told. No comments. No, that's called an appendage of the executive. This constitution, if you look at Article 1, contemplated, and that is where we must celebrate Justice Maraga and the Supreme Court, created the judiciary, parliament and the executive in such a way that although we all carry out the same mandate on behalf of the sovereign, we are supposed to appear to a great extent to be independent of one another. I cannot imagine that the Jubilee Brigade seated in the Senate or seated in the National Assembly, their brains are carried by the person who is supposed to be a leader in State House, because it is envisioned, that's the reason you have a majority leader in Parliament, that the leadership of Parliament will be controlled by the leader seated in Parliament. But the opposite is what is occurring. Could Parliament have done better in terms of averting the crisis? Yes, we would have done better. Would we have possibly used our powers to summon IEBC and ask them about the things that the Supreme Court had done? We would have done so. Why? Because when we were in the middle of this crisis about IEBC must go, Isaac Hassan must go, who solved the crisis? Eventually it was Parliament. And let me tell you, they missed a key moment of it just passed. It's calling what is famous with Jubilee, see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. That at the moment of crisis, and the reason we ended up with such good law, and the Supreme Court quoted it, is because we sat in a bipartisan manner with the majority leader and others from Jubilee and agreed that the way forward to unlock this perennial crisis of elections is to have a system that will ensure free, fair, credible, accurate elections. But we then missed the moment. And after missing the moment, we are where we are, where you have 7.3 generated results from some place. Nobody can justify the figures. You have
Citizen TV ran its own tally, and the difference was about 800 or so votes.
800?
I believe it was about 800.
You ran its own tally from what you got
from our tallying center right across.
From IBC with the documents, or how did you run it?
Yes, from IBC with documents.
You have the documents with you?
Yes.
You can justify the numbers?
Yes.
Even the ones of Kandara?
those are the documents that were manipulated.
The ones of Kandara, which one did you use? The one of Malonza? Which one did you use?
Been mentioned on Team probably 10 times in every show.
Yeah.
Let's
which
leave
ones
that
did you
there.
use? The point I'm making is this. Is that you asked a very legitimate question. A moment was passed. On 1st of September, there was some element of fresh air. All of a sudden, we were in national news, international news, about the only country that can nullify a presidential election. 60 days later, we are back on the news for the wrong reasons. Because we have created an election where there are even assumptions that 39% of the population or registered voters are the ones who participated. This is the president who has been elected by a small section of the public. Those impressions and those analogies, notwithstanding your figures, however you arrived at.
That is so unfair. But I'm going to be mature and not go down the road you want us to go. Yeah. But I appreciate oligarchy. A small group of people having control of a country or organization, and that's what you believe is happening right now.
You Googled it.
I had to Google it, especially when it comes to guys like you. Smooth talkers, so smooth on the tongue. Okay, gentlemen, I just want you to respond to that, Samson, because I think it is a legitimate question whether the nationalist parliament, I should say, has missed the moment that at the time when it could have stood up and said, you know, we are the representatives of the people, and if the executive doesn't want to talk, and if the political party leaders outside of parliament do not want to talk, we still have a responsibility. Yes. Would Jubilee concede that perhaps you could have done things differently in the leadership of the majority, been a little bit more accommodating, or tried in your own way to find, you know, even if it is the kamkunjis of the speaker, to create some sort of agreement on a common position as elected leaders, and that moment has passed?
Thank you, Anne. I think what I want to be honest, because even, let me use the point of elections amendment bill. We were very honest that if there were some serious issues, and it is good Mutula has admitted that some of the amendments he proposed were finally accommodated in the elections amendment bill, which is the position as Jubilee we have already insisted. But the issue is this provision of maybe leadership or in the house is that how can you discuss with the people who are boycotting the Senate and the National Assembly? It is not possible to have with them a discussion. Where can we sit when most of them are not even in the house? We don't know where they are in this Nairobi. It means maybe they have decided not to attend, because how will we discuss when these people are not there? And the issue is simple. If the issue of elections, and I've had my friend trying to equate that the voter turnout can equate to legitimacy, and yet if you look at how the president was elected, legality brings legitimacy. The president made over 50+1. In fact, we have an historic win of over 90% win by Uhuru Kenyatta. He achieved 25% at least 44 counties. The issue, the only people who did not vote in this country are 1.9 million voters of 4 counties. And in fact, it is Citizen and even media who showed them that they decided to intimidate, coerce, and block voting materials from being taken to polling centers in 4 counties. And therefore, when you talk about turnout, even in Macron, the one of France, 62% of the population, 63 did not turn out. Even in the Catalonia, 43 or 42 did not turn out to vote for the separation with Spain. And when you talk about turnout, it does not make any impact in the decision of the presidency that we have already. And therefore, when you discuss, and I'm surprised, these people decided not to turn out to vote. They went ahead to intimidate and cause violence and to sabotage. And therefore, when you will hear somebody who wants to rush to court, and I know most of them will want to rush to court, they might be NASA Paseo, they will use their proxies. It means we will be looking very keenly, because we would want to know if you perpetuate violence or you sabotage a legal process which is provided constitutionally by the Constitution, and you go ahead and benefit from it, then which country are we living in? It means that we will not allow, and if they have decided, they decided to postpone the elections on 26th October, which they went to court and they got an order that it should be done within 60 days. We have won this election fair and square, and we are saying let the healing process start. Let us move this country forward. If they have an issue, we should discuss. I have heard they are now using the NCCK to propose amendments to this constitution, and they are the ones, even Sarah Serema has said, the representation we have in this country is bloated and is taking much of the national resources instead would have gone to development. If we come and amend the constitution, create some of these positions, it means we no longer value the democracy we have, and therefore it means we want to reward people to go to power so that they can satisfy their ego, and therefore their kinsmen can be comfortable. And I think that is not the position.
Okay, Samson, we will talk about that because you're talking about NCK proposals, and we'll deal with it substantively a little later. But first I want to cross over to Nyeri now, where Martin Munene is standing by. And Martin, good morning. I want you to kick us off in our next discussion, which is the fact that the NASA leader Raila Odinga, and as we've been hearing from his generals, if you like, still believe that there should be a fresh election. What is the reaction of Nyeri residents to the prospects of returning to another poll in some form?
A very good morning to you, and from Nyeri County, and where I am the Dedan Kimathi University of Technology, where Governor Homega Kuru, who is the Nyeri governor, is expected to be launching a science conference, and he's going to be giving us an insight really into what you're asking, the fact that NASA is calling for fresh elections. And you know, I'm just going to talk to him, and he's going to just give us, as a political leader in this region and as a Jubilee leader also in this region, who went across this country campaigning for President Uhuru Kenyatta, his thoughts are on what would happen or on the calls by NASA that we should have a repeat election. Governor Homega Kuru, good morning to you.
Good morning, my brother.
So NASA is calling and saying that they do not recognize President Kenyatta's election in this election, and they are now demanding that Kenya goes through another round of a fresh election. What is your take on that as a governor?
Well, we, the people of Nyeri, have turned out to vote every single time. You've been asked to turn out to vote, and that vote is quite significant because, 85% of us in Nyeri turned out and voted for His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And that happened not just in Nyeri County, but all the way from Malakisi, all the way to the border of Uganda and going on to Mandera. From Karachuonyo to Karatina, everywhere. People were voting, from Lokishogio to Likoni. We all turned out to vote, and we voted. And this matter need to come to an end. Because when we voted on the 8th of August, Uhuru won. Again, we were told by the Supreme Court to go and repeat because of transmission issues. We agreed to go back and voted, and we have finished. We are done with voting. The people of Mount Kenya region and supporters of Jubilee and Jubilee itself, we are done with voting for this year. But the next time we are going to turn out to vote will be in the year 2022, and we shall be voting for our own, and we know exactly who that is because our team is intact. So there's nothing. I think while the minority might have their say, the majority truly must have their way, because that is what democracy is. And I do not think that any of the politicians own the people of Kenya and they own this country, and one individual has the right to dictate to us. It is a democracy, and that is what it is. Those are the rules of engagement. We have independent institutions. On our side as Jubilee, we have every single turn, every single moment respected these institutions and complied with their directives and instructions and judgments and rulings. And we want to tell this single individual that we are not your slaves, and we people of Nyeri are not going to be respecting you a lot if you do not respect the institutions and you don't respect the votes that we cast. And that basically is what you're going to say.
All right, and Honorable Raila Odinga is saying that he's going to be pushing for some of these changes through what is calling the People's Assembly. What is your take on that?
Well, we only have the National Assembly, the Senate, and the county assemblies. Those are the assemblies that are there in Kenya. Those are the ones recognized by the people. An individual who is planning to cause trouble in this country, the only thing we want to say as the people of Nyeri, because you're not going to take up machetes and go to war. We already finished with this during the struggle for independence, and we delivered freedom to this country in a very big way. Where we are studying is a theater of war. This place is named after the great field marshal, Dedan Kimathi, and we fought for independence, and we are done with that. And we have a government. That government has institutions. It has got systems, including security systems, and individuals who are properly trained, who are capable of crushing any kind of setup and arrangement that is not lawful, that is not legal, and this one is not. And a person trying to even get the churches involved to support his so-called assembly is actually a lot of nonsense, and we do not subscribe to it. And we are asking the security system, and we have very able men and women in uniform to deal with this. If people are going to start to break the law, they are going to create mayhem, we cannot deal with it, including the economic sabotage. I don't know what economic sabotage is actually capable of maturing in this country. He is not really at all. What he's been doing, all these things about being in a mood for electioneering the whole year, and the kind of mayhem, disruptions they have caused here and there. This economy cannot continue taking that kind of economic loss, and we know what it is. We know he caused trouble in January, February of 2007, and in 5 weeks the economy lost 200 billion shillings. That is equivalent to 10 Thika superhighway. We can't afford one individual, a single individual, to continue to cause trouble for this country. This country is bigger than Raila Amolo Odinga. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the views of Nyeri Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru, putting it straight and saying that as a leader in Nyeri County, they're not ready to go to another election, and they say that the next election they're going to take part in is going to be in 2022. I must say that, and this was also a message that during the campaigns before the rerun or the repeat election, that was one of actually the messages that local politicians were spreading across this county, saying that for Nyeri County, the elections are going to be on 26th, and after that, the only elections they're willing to take part in will be in the year 2022. Back to you, Anne.
All right, thank you for that. A very tough-talking governor there, Odoyo, on the prospects of a repeat election and, you know, a People's Assembly and the ability of the state to crush anything that is illegal. Fine, your thoughts on that, and just if you would kick us off with, how does NASA believe we would arrive at a repeat election now that some form of election has already been conducted in accordance with what the court ordered?
Some form is the right word. Thank you.
And I have to tell you that the very reasons why the first election was nullified are now worse off here than then. There were illegalities and irregularities. These illegalities arose because the other election was not transparent in any way. It was not verifiable. It was not fair in any way. This one was even interesting. They were not even agents for the other candidates. So they were doing anything they wanted to do. But as it be, if IBC knew that there were no agents for all the candidates, they could have made it transparent enough to brief the country that now we have had this number of voter turnout in this place and so on. But they spend more of their time looking at NASA, talking about NASA blocking election, saying NASA is running out a militia. Even this militia thing that we keep on talking about, NASA is militia. Let me tell you about a militia. A militia is not a team that burns tires on the road. A militia is not a group that throws stones all over and destroy property. A militia is a group that kills other people. They kill adversaries. You need to know that in Kenya we have had militias kill people in Sotik, Transmara, Enosupukia, Sondu, Nandi, Naivasha, and Eldoret. And if you look at all those people, the bottom line is one group of people that comes from NASA, the former URP base of NASA. They are the people who burnt a whole congregation in church in Eldoret, and that wasn't called a militia. They are the people who burnt a whole family in Naivasha, and that wasn't a militia. They are the people who kill people in Nandi, Kisumu border, Sondu and Transmara, and they have never been called a militia. This NASA thing, even when NASA has called for street protests or resistance, they have never killed human beings. They are the ones, in fact, who have been killed. So let's forget about this militia thing. In any case, if we are to vote on who is really a leader of a militia in Kenya, it is the DP William Ruto is the leader of any militia in this country.
Which one? ICC could not find that. So it is neither here nor there.
He did go through a court process, an international court process that vindicated him, that cleared him of.
So let him substantiate that DP is
wait a minute.
No, just substantiate.
I think, sir, that cannot go unanswered.
Yes, so we cannot allow.
You know, Deputy President William Ruto is also our Baba. You cannot talk in bad light about him.
Let's go back.
Let me answer you. Let me
respond to you. You've said
some great things. He went through her international judicial process, and I respect Mutola, my colleague here, is a very senior advocate. He was not found any guilt. The allegations, in fact, I was yesterday in between Nandi and Kisumu border, Awasi, Kopere. The people who are blocking the road, it's not the people from Nandi County residents. And our sons yesterday, some of my people were killed along the border. And it is the same, and we have been very cautious not to make any incitement statements. So if you go international television and allege that the deputy president is a head of militia, that is a very reckless statement, which is symptomatic of a militia that we are seeing, because now the resistance movement, they have decided that they need to brand somebody else to be the leader of a militia so that they can escape the critical eyes of Kenyans. And therefore, we cannot allow what happened. The ICC thing was done. It went into the international process. Even the Eldoret High Court, there were some people who were tried in Nakuru High Court. They were, some of them were put in, were arrested, were jailed. It was not, the deputy president did not have any part to play it. So it is very uncalled for my brother to throw words that can inflammate some of, as we talk now, and I want to say this passionately, almost 10 matatus of Wareng Saku was stoned yesterday when they were coming out of Kisumu into Nandi and Kericho. And this guy is just here making unsubstantiated allegations at the comfort of Nairobi. We should be very careful.
Fair enough. And I think
William Ruto on international media said Raila Odinga is leading a militia. If he's leading and financing a militia, that means he has another definition of a militia rather than the one that kills other people.
But this
other definition of the other militia is the one who fits it.
But the signature of NASA is violence.
Violence and the militia are two different things. Militias kill other people.
You're both wrong in some of the things that you've said. They are extreme and uncalled for, and will not proceed in that direction. I want to return you, Odoyo, to what we are talking about in terms of the legal process of procuring a fresh election, which is what NASA has called for.
So as it is today, the Kenyan citizens are ready. And I'm sure in another day or two, you will see a case in court, a petition against the winning of President Uhuru Kenyatta. He did not win in a free and fair election, just like the one before this one. So you can be sure we did not have an election like NASA promised you, that there will be no election on 26th. When an election is nullified and declared null and void, it is no election. It is like it did not exist in the very first place, just like the one on August 8th.
All right.
So we are going back to another election.
And you believe that that will come through, okay, a court process. So, Oliver, let me ask you this. Should it go the way Odoyo has argued, and that it is successfully challenged? Obviously, there's what the court can legally direct, but I just wonder what you believe the impact of a possible third election would be on the country.
First of all, just to a quick rejoinder to my friend Odoyo.
Please don't return us down the militia.
No, we are not going to the militia. I'm just...
you allowed him to start.
No, we are not going there. But I will certainly bring it to an end.
Yes.
So there you go. Let's give the good gentleman his time.
I'm just giving Odoyo a rejoinder that it is not in Jubilee to ensure that other candidates have agents. That is, it is not in Jubilee.
I think IEBC.
No.
Knowing that, they should have made it transparent enough so that even those who don't have agents can see that actually fairness is going on.
But isn't that up to the party to provide its agents? Surely.
I think, and also to just end the debate about the elections, you can't, when you are called to eat a cake, you can't refuse to eat a cake, and then when the cake is over, you start debating about the ingredients and the taste of the cake. when you declined to eat the cake, you took away your position to draw us into discussions about the pastry and how it tasted. So I think NASA...
So you bake a bad cake?
I think NASA lack the moral...
Let's not work with the cake analogy, please.
I think NASA...
You can't boycott the process.
Gentlemen, please. To your point.
I think NASA lacks the moral authority to lecture us on this election.
Yes.
And two, that be it as it may, going to Supreme Court is the right thing, and it is the right direction to take. It is a continuous process of verification to verify these results. Yes, we have the IBC has told us Jubilee won the presidency with about 98%. So yes, it is a true win. And it is the voice, it's the decision of the people. Going to Supreme Court is an extra process to go and rubber stamp that this was a real win. So I think going there is, and it is also helps to remove and clear the doubts around there.
But when you go to court, you must expect that it could go either way.
Yes.
And that's why I mean, if it stays, it stays, status quo remains. But if it doesn't, that's why I'm asking you what you think the impact would be, even if the court was to legally, within the law, find that perhaps there was an issue or two, we do not know, with the way IEBC ran this process. What do you think the impact of another nullification would be?
We must first of all start by saying the impact of the other nullification has brought us to a near collapse, whereby we have lost 700 billion in terms of the economic growth. Although it's positive that we have been told we have moved 2 steps ahead in the environment of doing business, but we must look at it this way. We must now, even as we go to Supreme Court, we must ask ourselves as a country, is this the direction we want to take? And I say this to the Supreme Court justices, that they must now take a decision that is in the interest of the people.
Yeah, public interest.
Public interest. Because look at it this way. Can we as a country manage another 60 days of politicking and grandstanding and bickering and all manner of things? I think we cannot. It is time now we move forward and we change the narrative from the sarcasm that politics is to something else. But somebody said, and it is the position, that democracy has a price. If it goes the other way, it is the price we are paying for democracy. And we must not fear that wherever it goes, it entrenches democracy.
Okay, Senator, I want to ask you this because, I beg your pardon.
Senator, which one? Me?
Yes. This, I don't know what's happening this time. Let me just say,
brilliant.
I'm taking a lot of laughing. Let me just call it the joy of the Lord. Okay. Senator Muchula, you are one character. You're an officer of the court. And to that extent, I believe it would be your position that, court orders must be obeyed, and that a court must find whatever it will find within the law, within the law
and the facts,
and the facts, exactly. But having said that, can the court solve everything? Can the court, as some are arguing now, incubate, quote unquote, a democracy? Is that their role? And what do you think the impact of a possible nullification would be? Is this a situation that, whilst can be resolved at a court, requires a different remedy, a political negotiation of some kind?
There are 2 ways to look at it, both the politics and the law of it. And let me explain that everything that concerns public funds concerns everybody who is in NASA or Jubilee. When the country spends 12 billion shillings and nurses are on strike, counties don't have money, it concerns us. And therefore, in fact, I agree with Odo that even if there was no agent, if Jubilee didn't have an agent at a polling station, it doesn't mean then you steal. Simply because nobody's looking, so you steal. Somebody send a code. Integrity is doing those things when nobody's looking at you. That is what is called integrity. Now, let me explain about the Supreme Court. There are issues about Chebukati's pronouncements. You're attacking the pronouncements. Were there 3.5 million people who were recorded at the Kimskit or not? Was the decision to postpone the election in 4 or 5 counties and then not conduct those elections in those 25 constituencies justified, one by one? You don't treat a county generally. Was that some form of ostracization? Number 3, Anne Kiguta, the last process of the Supreme Court, we ended up having something we call stillborn. Because there were things that were complained about. But question is, by the time we went into the elections in 60 days, were those issues addressed? Now, the Supreme Court, in my view, although attempted to, or did actually nullify the election, they ended up giving possibly with one hand and took away with the other, where they said that they did not find, and that is what Jubilee was hanging on, and Chiloba and his cohorts, that they did not find any person capable of what they found were grave errors to nullify a presidential election. It was not a simple decision. So, what will inform the future? And are there legal lacunas? Are there issues legally? Are there issues in IEBC where Chebukati says that every decision that he made was countermanded? This man somehow found his voice and grew some things at the last week of the election. When did he become Paul? He was Saul throughout, at some point became Paul, and all of a sudden he says this thing is going to become credible. Akombe has gone, he finds his voice, I don't know. There are certain legal questions, but there are political issues that you must ask, whether those political questions, because if you still order an election in 60 days, let's just assume, because like you've rightly pointed out to my colleague here, the political Jubilee analyst, whether or not
it can be argued that the one next to you is another one. So let's continue.
I don't know how you chose your analyst.
Make your point.
The point is, even after 60 days, if you nullify the presidential election after 6 to be held in another 60 days, whatever period, do you still trust Gulie, Nkadha, Chebukati, Chiloba, Muhati, Kasaid?
Chiloba is on leave.
Leave. He gives himself leave.
There are those who trust them.
You know, that is the question. Because let me tell you, the election is about trust. If there is no trust by the majority of Kenyans, and the low turnout in the election was because even the people who did not vote in Jubilee zones, forget about the excuses that it was raining, because there's no polling station that was flooded in Garissa or Kiambu. The question is, most Kenyans most likely did not turn out because they never trust these people, and therefore, Anne Kiguta, that is a political question. That is where Parliament comes in. As to the question, are there certain reforms, are there certain issues that must be handled politically in Parliament before you have an election?
Now, which Parliament? And you're forming...
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why the question of the People's Parliament comes in. How do we deal with Chiloba when he becomes reticent, when he becomes the way intransigent, he doesn't want to listen? When Chiloba behaves the way he's behaving, when you have a commission that is divided between 4 commissioners who believe they should take instructions from Jubilee and 2 others who are supposed to be allegedly NASA aligned, and when a person like Rosalind Akombe decides enough is enough, I will talk about this when I'm in New York. But you know... So that answers your question.
You believe there should be political negotiation primarily?
Yes.
But
there is a political question.
You're talking about through Parliament, a Parliament that you have boycotted, and therefore the People's Parliament, whose findings are not going to be legal or constitutional.
I'm going to request...
I beg your pardon. I'll come to you for rejoinder. I just need to cross somewhere. Briefly, my apologies, Senator. Let's go to Parliament now. There's a press conference that's being addressed by Rift Valley members of Parliament. They are talking about tension that is happening in border areas. Let's listen in.
Na kuna mtu atapoteza maisha. Kwa hivyo nitapatia nafasi waheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa huyu ni mbunge wa Tindret, sehemu ambayo imeathirika kidogo, atatueleza, na vile vile atatueleza mikakati ambayo ameweka na mikakati serikali itaweka, na baadaye pia tutapatia waheshimiwa wengine kutoka sehemu ya Kericho ambaye mpaka wao pia iko upande ule mwingine na wale majirani wetu, kisha baadaye sasa ndio tutawapatia mwelekeo ya kuweza kutatua tatizo hili. Mheshimiwa Meli.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Kutuny. Kama mlivyoarifiwa hapo awali, as you've been informed by Honorable Kutuny that we've come here as members of Parliament from the sections in the Rift Valley that have been having skirmishes or tension. But I want to report to you that last week I was in a peace-making campaign trail with the Kisumu governor, Honorable Nyang', and the governor of Nandi. And we went across the two borders, Kisumu and Nandi, and we managed to talk to the people who are there. And the members of parliament for Moroni and I, and the MCAs who are there, we beseech the people the need to hold peace. So similarly, though yesterday there were a bit of roadblocks in Awasi and parts of Chemelil, the government managed to open them. We've come here to appeal to wananchi, both the NASA supporters and the people in the three counties of Kericho, Nandi, and Kisumu, to maintain peace and calm. That this is our country, this is our nation, this is when we need one another. We are brothers and sisters. We need to ensure that we keep our brothers safe, and we are our brothers' keeper. So I'm appealing to them. And yesterday evening, I also called the governor and the member of parliament for Moroni. Tomorrow we have a function where we are going to issue checks for sugarcane farmers in Chemelil area. And these are all farmers from both the three sub-counties. So the purpose, the three counties, and the purpose of this press conference is to urge wananchi to have peace. We are not working for one region. Even as a member of parliament for Tinderet, and the farmers cut across. And the checks that we are going to issue are not only for Kisumu County or Nandi County or Kericho County, for all our farmers. So we are here to call for peace, to call for calm, to call for normalcy, to call for understanding amongst our people across the country, so that normalcy and good neighborliness proceeds and continues in our country. So that is exactly what we want as leaders of Jubilee, leaders of Rift, and the leaders from that particular region, that we are calling on all our people to come together and live in peace. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So Mheshimiwa, then Niganet. Yes. Okay. Yes. Then start by introducing yourselves. Yeah. Oh, yes. All right. Then you can come. Yes. Yes.
My name is Honorable Mutai from Bureti constituency in Kericho County. We are here as members of Parliament from the both North and South Rift to come and urge our people to be tolerant and keep peace. We also want to urge our colleagues in the NASA fraternity that there's something which is creeping in, what we call institutional, I can refer as institutional violence. What was witnessed yesterday in Awasi area was uncalled for, it was unprovoked, and we want to castigate it completely. Our people in Rift Valley have never blocked any road, they've never attacked any vehicle. But what happened yesterday, where we saw motor vehicles for Wareng being stoned in Awasi, we went to condemn it completely as uncalled for. What followed in Kericho, we also want to condemn, because we want to urge our residents within Kericho that they be tolerant. We are one. Politics will come and go, but neighborliness and good neighborliness will always remain. The bottom line and the one irreducible minimum is that we'll always remain Kenyans. The peace initiatives that are ongoing in the region, I personally was part of it with Honorable Koech from Belgut and the Honorable Member from Soinsigowet and our governor, is what we are calling for to be continuous. It should be a continuous process. We should go on forever. We ought to live in peace and be one. What you also urge is that let's put politics aside and let's respect each person's political inclination. We don't have to condemn a person because of their political persuasion, but we ought to respect them. We are urging our NASA brothers that let's not be the first. The violence that has erupted on the borderline can't be said, we cannot accuse one person or the other, but we want to say let every person, every leader carry the responsibility to ensure that we don't see that violence again. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Yes, so I'll give much more Hillary. Niganet, yes, to say something.
Well, thank you so much. My name's Hillary Kosgei, MP Kipkelion West. My constituency borders Muhoroni constituency all the way from Koru to the Nandi escarpment. And as you have been briefed by the members who have spoken here, peace initiatives that have taken place in that area were organized specifically by members of parliament from the Kalenjin community. And the scale and the manner it is going is unpleasant, because it is looking like an invitation and a provocation to violence. Because when members of one community block roads in Koru.
All right, and I just want to give a little bit of context to what you're hearing from that presser called by Rift Valley legislators in particular. They're talking about a border dispute. Now, it is being exacerbated by the prevailing political dispute in the country, but it's from the Kisumu, Kericho, and Nandi border. So you had talked a little bit about this earlier, Samson. Maybe you can just explain what has been happening on the border, the genesis of that issue.
Thank you, Anne. And even as we urge our residents from Kisumu, Nandi, and Kericho to maintain peace, is the problem we are having here there is the border issue. And I think politics has just come to be the catalyst of the entire. I think some of these issues, I think there are some issues with border, the issue of naming of an escarpment in Nandi, which is they have turned it to call Nyando escarpment instead of Nandi, but it's technically in Chemelil Chemaswar. And in fact, I sat with residents before the 26 general elections, and one of their concern was that we have a problem with the border, because when you look at Chepswerta across to Chemursoi and maybe across Kibigori, we have the center that shares between Nandi County, called Kibigori Trading Center near Chepswerta. They have been having an issue that the border has been moved towards Nandi, and therefore I think these are some of the issues. And with a lot of respect, I'm aware my learned senior Mutula Kilonsa has said there is a county boundaries bill, and I hope some of these, when this law will be made into act, and of course we'll push it and lobby so that some of these issues can be resolved. But what happened yesterday is that since there was a boycott by the NASA, some of the matatu, and specifically Warev, and I think they have reported to the police, were attacked in Awasi, which we share between that branches to Kericho, to Nandi, and Kisumu, were attacked. Fortunately, there were no fatalities, but some of the passengers were injured. And I think they have suspended the operations along that route. For some of us who are in Nandi Hills town, some of they shared their experience. But this had happened. I remember when I went at night on 26th, at around 8, as I was driving to a place called Senetwa, the tallying center of Tindresam County, the police had to try and remove the blockades that were put at the Kopere Junction that separates Tindred, Kisumu counties. And I think the real issue there is boundary issue. And I think also the same case in Kericho. So I wish some of these issues we should look over way. And I want to thank my colleague that when this law becomes an act, we should be able to rectify some of these issues so that we don't have any future. But I think the catalyst has been politics. I think because of different political opinions that we share, maybe with Kisumu residents and Nandi residents and Kericho. But it has been peaceful. Yesterday, Kericho town, some of the roads were blocked because there had already some of the matatus had been attacked that were leaving Kisumu on their way to Kericho and even to Eldoret. But we want to urge the residents across the 3 counties, let us maintain peace. And I think tomorrow, when we'll be issuing checks to some of the farmers, it will come from the 3 counties. So let us continue sharing that good neighborliness as we even try to bring tension down in this country.
Okay, so it is originally a county boundary issue that we're dealing with. Okay, time for us to take another break. On Citizen Extra, we're back with more after this.